Okay, I had mentioned last week that I was inspired by a commercial I saw last week. I saw it again this morning, and I thought I'd tie it into the historical Jesus. Now, I know many of you already know something about the Constitution, Bill of Rights, but let me remind us the First Amendment, part of the Bill of Rights, it was added to the Constitution in 1791. You remember that, Al, don't you?
I was there when they signed it.
All right, I'm sorry about that. So Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free expression thereof. Or, well, let me just, let's stop there. That's the part of this amendment I want to focus on. Now, for some reason, people still, everything has to be interpreted. It's still interpreted differently. But notice we already have a protection from the state imposing a state religion on us. It's very wise for people to do that. So you can be as, and then it goes on, but the state or the government can also not prohibit the free expression of religious belief. Now, that's, I think, a wonderful thing. So again, we are also free to worship or free to be without religion in our culture. And that's where this separation from church and state actually, that's what we're talking about. Now, as you know, some people get really freaked out if they see outside a state building the Ten Commandments. Now, this is a slippery slope for people. Some feel that that's a violation of the separation of church and state. A lot of people don't have a problem with it, and I'll go on and say why I don't necessarily, because I don't think that's imposing state religion on anyone. By the way, where does this stop? How about all of the fantastic works of art inspired by the Bible or faith, and Christian faith? Should we remove those from state museums? I mean, how do you separate that which inspired great art from the art itself? I mean, where does this stop? I'll tell you what it is, really. It is a trend in our culture to try to expunge, to eviscerate religion from our culture. That's really, I think, what this is about. Now, again, nobody here wants to impose religion on anybody. So let's make some of this clear. So one of the organizations today, I think we ought to be aware of, for the very reason that this, I think, gives us an insight to our culture. All right? I do not hate atheists. I do not hate this group. But I think it's a good way to understand as Christians what's going on in our culture. Freedom from Religion Foundation. Okay? You can have all sorts of organizations. I belonged to Benji's Bombers at one time. It's a softball team. Yeah, not a drinking club. Yeah, so people are free to have an organization. Here's one that really wants to make sure religion doesn't encroach. Really, I thought we had a First Amendment to do that. Do we really need an organization? No, because this organization is out to do more than just protect us. We already have an amendment. So what's going on here? Here's a guy who's not afraid to burn in hell.
That's good. Because he probably will.
Yeah, what a brave statement. Thanks, Chris. You know?
That's good.
All right, let him go. But why do we need to see this? Why do we need an organization for somebody who says, well, I'm not afraid to go to hell? He's really going to be surprised when he wakes up one day and he finds himself in the presence of God. You know? Never mind. Nobody died for our sins. Jesus Christ is a myth. Freedom from religion foundation. Now really, why is this a part of their organization? If they're really just concerned about the state not imposing religion on anybody. You see, there's more here than meets the eye. And I think it's an insight into our culture, and I think the church needs to be aware of this so that we can talk about it. We can bring some reason to it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's in the Gall-Dang Declaration of Independence. You know,
More clear.
like it or not, man, this concept of religion or a creator is embedded in our culture. And you can deal with it however you want, but it's very difficult to go reinvent the wheel, so to speak, here. So it's a part of it. And again, nobody is imposing religion on anyone in our culture, I guarantee you. In fact, it may be just the opposite. So here's the guy that's doing the commercial for this foundation on CBS, interestingly enough. I saw him again this morning. Now, Mr. Pinker has written a book about we don't need religion to be moral. Well, there's, that nobody's arguing with that. We all have friends that are not religious or even atheists and are good people. Nobody's disputing that. You don't need to be religious to be moral. I think it helps, but you don't need that. So that's not the issue. Interesting enough, when he writes this, though, he's talking about societies that have turned secular, but had their origin based upon Judeo-Christian values. And by the way, some of these European states that are now mostly secular, and people are hardly ever going to church anymore, that are so good, are now freaking out because immigrants are coming to their country. And they're not sounding very nice at all. Of course, that's not mentioned in some of this work. Also another guy by the name of Zuckerman. But notice this. He's saying we need to protect ourselves from the imposition of religion in government. And he offers us, he's advocating reason, not religion, because Western culture, Enlightenment culture, is under attack. Well, I'll tell you what, Enlightenment culture should be under attack. And I'll come back to this. Now, what's going on, and how can we better understand what's going on? That's kind of hard to see. Advanced science tells us thoughts and the universe are both
Electromagnetic energy.
you can see it, electromagnetic energy. Now, really? Can anyone believe that? That's a wild thought, just in itself, coming from science. So here, I think what's going on here today. What I would like to illustrate about our culture using this is I fear that people, especially youth, are being misled by certain secular, atheist, materialistic rhetoric. That is neither based on science nor facts, in fact, is really a belief system in itself. I'm going to say that again. My concern is that what we're hearing is neither based on science nor facts, and in fact is a belief system itself. In other words, when you're promoting that you believe in reason, not religion, that is a belief system. Okay. So this belief system is, by the way, we all know, is making headway today. Religion is in decline, at least people going to church. Look around. Why is that? Because science is confirmed no God exists? Is it because it has been scientifically proven that only matter exists? Then we can just eliminate God, right? God is spirit, no God, only matter exists. How about this? It's because it's been demonstrated historically that Jesus never existed. He was a mythical figure. Or how about this one? Is it because religious people are all childish and lack reason and knowledge?
Yep.
Well, what would you think if I told you all of the above were mistaken and untrue? In fact, false. But we have a culture that believes this.
Yep.
Not based upon science, not based upon facts. So where does that leave us? Only an uneducated and an unenlightened culture accepts or believes things without investigating the claims.
Yep.
And that's who we've become today in America. And by the way, a college education no longer insulates people from ignorance. And I'm speaking as an insider. And by the way, it's not just social media that's to blame for this. It's a whole culture. We accept these things as unequivocally true without looking into it. Now, how do I know? Well, first of all, I see it all the time in students. Let me give you two examples. Now, I've mentioned this before, so excuse me. First of all, this idea that's promulgated by a Freedom from Religion group, that Jesus Christ is a myth. No scholar, no New Testament historian teaching at any secular university, no ancient Roman historian teaching at any university in America or the world that I know of, rejects the historical Jesus. Why? Because they're believers? No, because of historical evidence. Tacitus, 5th chapter, for example, and on and on and on. But still, we have people making money. They're not university professors. They're not experts going out and say Jesus never existed. The Jesus myth. Read, by the way, pick up Tacitus, the Roman historian, read it. But still, freedom from religion and some social media sites postulate this falsehood, and people believe it. I don't know how many times I've heard even some educated people say, well, we really don't know if Jesus ever existed. Secondly, the belief that only matter exists. Now, most students believe this. Even some science majors among them believe that only matter is real and only matter exists. Now, notice, this unproven philosophical position eliminates the possibility of God's existence. If you say, no, only matter exists, only matter is real. End of story. Go home. Eat, drink, and be merry. Because tomorrow you don't burn in hell.
Hopefully.
So, by the way, it's not only unproven, but it's going through heightened criticism by scientists. For example, ask one of these people or an atheist this question. Would any modern scientist, physicist, claim that consciousness, it's something that's not material, by the way, right? consciousness or mind produces matter. Boy, they'd say, not only no, but hell no. But it's just the opposite. And this is coming from science, the God of our culture. You'd think that people's response would be moving from atheism to agnosticism. You think people would say, based on science, maybe there is a God, if they were open to look at the facts. If science indicates there's more to reality than matter, more than the physical universe, I've mentioned before, that blows the lid off. There's all sorts of possibilities for the existence of God if more than matter exists. Mm-hmm. Anybody ever heard of Max Planck? Mm-hmm. I regard consciousness as fundamental. Not just a byproduct. I regard matter, says the scientist, as derivative from consciousness. Do you realize the impact of that statement? That matter comes out of consciousness? Now, where could you take that? I'll tell you where I could take it. In the beginning, God created. And how did He create? With the mind. Let there be light. Out of consciousness, out of the mind or the consciousness of God, comes the physical world. And by the way, what does science tell us? E equals mc squared. Out of energy comes matter. But we live in a culture that believes only matter exists. There's no possibility of God. Even when science is having a greater and greater problem with that prospect based upon science. So even agnostic scholars like Thomas Nagel, one of the most famous philosophers of mind in America, who wrote a book, I've got it if you want to borrow it, Why the Materialist Neo-Darwinian Conception of Nature is Almost Certainly False. Why is he saying that? Again, based upon the information. So here's a guy who's looking at the facts and coming as a thinker to this position. So, the correct response would be from any person of reason, right? Any reasonable person, any person doing critical thinking, not blind faith in old, outdated beliefs, that maybe there's something to this. So it's a reminder, listen, I know there's some people, religious people, that are dogmatic, that are closed-minded. We know that. But they reject science. They're unreasonable. But Pinkerton's suggestion that there's only one choice, I hope you're insulted by this. There's only one choice, religion or reason? No. Yeah, there are some religions that are, again, unreasonable, but most are not. In fact, I would suggest it takes a great deal of thinking to be a religious person these days, to open our minds to the facts that are available coming in from science. And remember what the Scripture said. What did God say Himself? Come, let us reason together. Not just blind faith. So let me ask the freedom from religion crowd a question. If we already have protection from the government imposing religion on anyone, and the Constitution requires religious authorities do not usurp the laws of the land, why do we need their organization? Is it because they hate religion? Like many in the Enlightenment culture did? Mm-hmm. They hate anything that's not Western? That they have to postulate religion versus reason? I'd like to challenge that. I also like to challenge having religious symbols on state property. It no more undermines the First Amendment or the Constitution any more than our national symbols, the American flag or the bald eagle, threaten religious freedom. They can exist side by side. In fact, I would argue that the free expression of religious faith that's got this country a long way actually strengthens our republic. Not forcing religion, but strengthens. So let me close with this reminder. Jesus himself confronted religious leaders who were irrational, unreasonable. The scribes, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees that had turned Israel's loving God into an empty, ritualistic religion, at the same time giving them power. We as Christians need to do a better job self-critiquing, no doubt. But we also need to stand up against this irrational, uncritical accusation that's levied against people of faith in our culture. We can't leave it to the skeptics and their misbeliefs for our culture. We need to stand up. We need to talk to people. We need to tell them the truth. Our culture needs help, needs answers. I hope you're sharing. I hope you're talking. I hope you're saying, I don't believe that. Here's the truth about what I believe. And here's what's wrong with our culture, making these false accusations. Let's get back to being reasonable.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.